What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another video. And I just came across this piece of news, and I think, it's just laughable. And there are many points in this piece of news are straight up propaganda and um, outright ridiculous. And I think it's absolutely imperative for us to go through this to see how the um, how the U.S. controls um, controls the narrative and how they are and what their current agendas are. So let's get to it. So basically, if you don't know, the Biden administration is going to impose new and more tariffs on China after lifting some of them off from the Trump administration. So we all know that this year is the election year, the presidential election year, and Trump and Biden will be facing off each other. Trump has always been very tough on China and imposed a lot of tariffs when he was in the office. But Biden has taken a more soft approach towards China. But this is the election year, and in order to get the voters, especially um, Trump voters, to change their mind and switch their side from voting for Trump to potentially voting for Biden, um, Biden has to take certain measures to change his strategy and change these strategies to appeal to these voters that are more favorable towards Trump, which is very obvious. What he is doing right now is trying to appease that group of voters. So let's go through this piece of news. A sweeping White House action to raise tariffs on China as early as next week reflects lessons learned about the behavior of the country. I mean, there's no lessons learned. Like they already know what's going on with China and the trade situation. Like it's nothing new. The U.S. has been in a um, in a loss against China in trade for years, for decades. As a matter of fact, like this is nothing new. And the White House announced that um, Tuesday is the culmination of a 2-year investigation and reflects economic damage that China already inflicts on the US, says Greta, whatever. But the reality is that, you know, whatever damage that they claim China has inflicted on the US choose it itself because, in return, it gets um, cheap products from China. If these products were made in the US, they would triple, quadruple in price, you know. And here, it's so ridiculous, but they call that economic damages that China inflicts on the US. I mean, this is just some, finger pointing, unfair, ridiculous accusations. She cited unfair trading practices in areas like solar panels and electric vehicles. We've seen the impact of China's industrial policy and excess capacity in a number of sectors, she added. It's true that China has a lot of capacities in certain areas, especially when it comes to manufacturing, like building solar panels, building electric vehicles, and that's why they're able to produce much cheaper products. Um, so what the U.S. is doing right now is nothing but a protectionist policy, which is aimed to protect its own auto industry and um, and other industries because it knows that it's not possible to compete against China on prices in these areas. The Biden government review began in 2022 and is focused on duties that were first imposed in the Trump administration. Its apparent conclusion next week could impact tariffs on a range of industries from electric vehicles to batteries to solar power to critical minerals. So, blah blah blah. The announcement also reportedly quadruple tariffs on EVs from China. That move could raise the tariff rate to roughly 100% from its current level of 25%. Like this is very obvious a protectionist policy from the US, because the EV from China is just so cheap and good too. They're not any like they're actually better than the EVs that's made in the US, and the price is less than 50% of what's being sold in the US. So the US has to place tariffs on China's EVs so that um, they so that these Chinese EVs won't be able to sell any of their cars in the US because it wouldn't make any sense if a car if an EV comes from China that sells for, let's say, $10,000, but now you place a 100% tariff on it, it will be sold at $20,000, basically doubling its price, and such price level will no longer be competitive in the market, and that's exactly what the US want. It doesn't want Chinese EVs to flood the market, to damage the businesses that's of other US EV companies. During a press conference Friday, China's foreign policy responded to the reports by charging that the US continues to politicize trade issues, abuse the so-called review process of Section 301 tariffs, and planned tariff hikes. China will take all necessary measures to defend its rights, the spokesperson said. Yeah, which is very true. The U.S. is indeed trying to do whatever it takes um, to prevent Chinese companies to entering its market, basically. And the Biden administration is saying that China has done damages to the U.S., which makes no sense because that's what the U.S. chose in the first place, which is cheaper products. And yeah, of course, Biden said China is not competing, they're cheating. And we've seen the damages here in America. Very interesting. O'Neill, before Congress last month, U.S. Trade Representative described the review as an effort to respond to China's unfair practices and take a serious look at how exists to address this problem. Added that China's unfair practice spanning a range of industries, including steel, aluminum, solar panels, batteries, electric vehicles, critical minerals, solar panel manufacturing. Okay. Yeah, a coalition of US solar manufacturers filed a petition to Biden administration last month saying they have been injured by inexpensive Asian imports. Well, inexpensive Asian imports are good for the US consumers but bad for the US companies because they cannot compete on the price. But unfortunately, the US is going to protect the interest of these companies and capitalists, so the consumers will have to pay a higher price since they will lose access to cheap Chinese products. It's always the common people, the poor and the middle class that's getting hit the most. You know, but they also said that they could potentially lower some duties on consumer products. It's still unclear how the tariffs are likely to be announced next week. Okay, so you know, this is pretty much what's going on right now, and Biden is pretty much trying to mimic what Trump did, um, which is to act tough on China because it's good for his own election. And we all know that it's a political play, and right now the election is the most important thing for the U.S. president. But once whoever that's being reelected, maybe Biden, maybe Trump, they will change their policies again to reflect what the market really needs. And yeah, all those political play is just a way to manipulate uh, the opinions of the voters, so they can keep their power and their position. You know, for these politicians, they will pretty much say and do anything um, to keep their power and stay in their power. You know, this is nothing new. But right now they're targeting China, and they are pointing fingers at China and putting all the blames on China. So it's basically a tactic to diverge the tension that's going on internally in the U.S., because we all know the inflation and all that situation um, that's going on in the U.S. economy is not doing well. People are losing their buying power, um, and also coupled with the high interest rate, people are in debt and they can't afford anything. So the politicians are trying to diverge that tension to China, and basically using it as a scapegoat. So here you know why, but none of that is gonna actually solve the problem. The economy is in the U.S. is not good, and it's gonna keep getting worse. That is the reality, and no one in the U.S. is actually addressing this problem. If they place more tariffs on other country, not just China, it's gonna negatively affect the consumers, because now they have no option to buy cheaper products. They have to pay a very high price to buy things that are manufactured in the U.S., which is you know at astronomical prices because of how expensive the labor and materials are in the U.S. They're gonna have to pay um, triple, quadruple, or even higher the price of compared to the Chinese products. So you know this is not good for the average American, but it's good for the businesses and corporate America, because it's a way to stifle competition and prevent China from entering the U.S. market. So what we can see here is not just China that's gonna get hit with more tariffs from the U.S. Here we can see that Mexico is also on the list. Um, here we can see that they include up to 60% duties on many Chinese goods and 10% levels on other major trading partners. So China is obviously getting the highest tariff, but other countries are getting 10% tariffs as well. Trump also floated the idea of a 100% duty on all automobiles from Mexico during a recent Time interview. So Mexico is unfortunately on the list as well. Um, because a lot of the products from overseas are being shipped to Mexico first and imported to the US through Mexico. So effectively, these made in China or wherever products um, will become Mexican products in disguise and get imported into the US. That's why Trump also wants to place a duty on all the automobiles coming from Mexico, because there's a lot of automobile plants from China that's in Mexico. If they manufacture the cars in Mexico and export it, it would be Mexican cars instead of Chinese cars, so they can uh, bypass the insane amount of tariff on them. But with this new idea that Trump is floating, which is obviously gonna hurt Mexico's export, you know, it's obviously gonna hurt Mexico's export and its economy as well. So it's not good news for Mexico. Anyway, guys, this is all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed it and find the information useful. If you like the video, please comment down below and let me know what you think. Don't forget to click the subscription button, and I will see you in the next video.